Hello and welcome to this video that's discussing the following topic of Olympic weightlifting variations and how to use them. Well, what I mean by how to use them is basically how to program them, how to implement them in an athlete or your own training. I am going to be your host or video producer, you could say, Braden Moore. I am a USAW Level 1 certified athlete who has been in the sport for upon 3 years now. And weightlifting is something I'm very passionate about and thus I've done a lot of research into. So I was very excited to make this video and discuss something about my favorite sport I've ever done in my life. So we are first going to be talking about variations. As you can see clearly written on the board, the big term we're using for variations thing is not a full range of motion snatch or clean and jerk. Now obviously this makes it so there's a lot of variations by that definition. Well, that's very important why you have the knowledge of how to use variations and what variations are better for which situation with an athlete, like a technical error, power development error, patience error, all etc. we'll be going into later into this video. So right now I am writing up on the board the general variations that I'm discussing in this video. Starting with how we're going to define the Olympic lifts, like the portions of them as you break them up. Then we're going to move into and we're going to talk about basically what pulls are, what our hang positions are, and what our blocks are. And then we have some other miscellaneous movements we'll get into towards the end of this little section here. So, beginning with the Olympic list, we have a start position. This is going to be the position where we start at on the ground with the bar right in the middle of our shins. We're basically looking for feet about under your hips, shins are slightly forward, hips are slightly higher than your knees, so a little above parallel. Shoulders are away over the bar. You have a nice wide grip. And then that's basically the basics of our start position. Next, we're going to define the first pull as from that start position, lifting to your knee. So that's going to essentially entail you pushing up with the legs and stopping at the knee. That's going to be defined as our first player. Our second pull is going to be to the hip. So second pull is from that knee to that hip. So as you push through your legs, you're going to shift your knees low forward for a rebend and bring the bar into the hip. Next is what we're going to call our extension, which is basically triple extension. You may also hear it here. It's the full extension of our hips, knees, and ankles. So it's the final drive of the legs where we're going to transfer into the turnover phase, which is where we're going to start pulling ourselves under the bar, going to the receiving position. And then our recovery is from that receiving position. In this case, the snatch, it's an overhead squat. And the clean, it's a front squat. And you stand up. Next, we're going to shift over into the pulls. So now we're going to do a little more of the variation talk of this section, you could say. And for our pulls, they tend to involve the most from basically the start position all the way up to the extension. We ignore the turnover and recovery. We can do pulls from starting at like the knee, the thigh, etc. But those are not commonly used as much, so it's always almost better to just do a full pull. So, like I said, we do not use the turnover whatsoever. So pulls are a very basic movement, usually only clean snatch pulls. There are high pulls, which they definitely can be useful, but like if you're programmed for a beginner athlete, you don't really need to incorporate high pulls until much later into their development cycle. Now shifting over to hangs. Now hangs are going to be more commonly used as a variation for our Olympic lifts because it's our Olympic lifts from a hang position, hence the name of a hang. So a hanging position could look like snatch from knee, snatch from thigh, clean from below the knee, clean from above the knee. And those are the hangs. So basically, how you initiate these movements is you pull up to your hip, and then you lower to the desired position, pause for a brief second, and then perform the lift. So we're essentially lifting up, dropping you to the hang position, and then we're going. That's the basic definition of a hang. Now, finally, moving into our blocks. These are very similar to a hang position, except for one key difference. The weight starts on blocks that are set to a specific height. So if you wanted to do a block snatch from thigh, you would set up a bunch of your boxes the rest of the bar upon to where when when you're getting into position, I should say, the bar is at your thigh. So you have to take the appropriate position. In this case, if you're doing a snatch from thigh from the blocks, you would really just want to have shoulders over the bar, relax arms, jumpy position, all that. So, and now I'm going to discuss this little small other movement section that we can classify under variations. These are going to be general not associated directly with the Olympic list, but are very much essential to any good programming. And that we're going to start out that list with some of the more obvious ones like up, back, and front squat. Sorry about that glare. So the squats are like the most essential movement to the Olympics other than the lifts themselves. Next, we'll move on to accessories for like your more upper body areas, like such as a skull crusher, a barbell rows, stuff to train like your upper back, your triceps, your shoulders, because we need to have that stable frame for going overhead, like in the jerk, in the snatch, all that. And that, since we're on the upper body, let's begin to talk about some pressing in a second. After I continue writing this out. All right, so now our general pressing, like our strict pressing, our dumbbell pressing, our kettlebell pressing, our single arm dumbbell pressing for some accessories. Though those are very key in help building shoulder strength, rotator cuff strength. We want to get a little more technical into it. As far as stability, pushing back, improving some mobility. Those stuff is also really essential to good programming. And then we have some ab movements for lots of good core strength movements because we need to have a strong core, strong brace to be able to absorb into. So you know what variations are. So that's always good step definition. But now you know why do we do them versus just spamming snatches and clean and jerks and back squats. Pretend those are variation by this definition, but still, why do we do variations instead of just snatching, clean jerking our athletes or ourselves into oblivion just so we can get better? All right, so that's gonna fall into some major categories that we will be discussing in this part of the video. So the biggest one, as you can see, it's already written up on the board, is going to be technique and complexes. Technique, mainly the big thing is variations are very good at helping us fix and correct technique, and also including complexes for maybe some extra volume or something that we'll dab into a little later. All right. Secondly, another great benefit of it is that variations can be very fun for an athlete. All right, or yourself once again if you're programming yourself. But they can just be fun because sometimes an athlete is just tired of doing the same movements over and over again and just needs a break. And a variation can be perfect to do that. Something to spice up the training, make it more interesting. Another reason is motor patterns. Variations help instead the correct movement patterns, motor patterns, same thing in this instance. And it helps them move better. And then lastly, it helps with positional strength. All right, our strength at like a specific position or part of the lift is what can really excel at. Oh yeah, excuse me real quick. So let's start with the techniques and complexes. The first thing we wrote down. All right. So the first technique, let's elaborate a little more. I mean, it helps you fix a bunch of various kinds of errors. Like I said, you're bringing your some common errors that is common in lots of athletes. Don't be ashamed that this is you, by the way. That could be bringing the hip to the bar is a very big one. Your forward in your feet, such as you're shifting forward as you go through the lift instead of staying balanced in your midfoot position. Or if you're not finishing your leg drive, cutting your extension a little short, trying to pull under a little bit. This can also coincide with another error of being an arm bend. Or I guess I should specify more than you're bending your arms. Uh, I mean early arm bend, like bending your arm when you're still supposed to drive with your legs. This directly gets rid of the energy kinetic energy you're putting into the bar, and it will slow it down, which leads to more misses. Finally, another one you can call it just no acceleration, or aka you drive as hard as you can from the beginning of the lift to the end of the lift, and the bar is just staying at a constant speed and not accelerating. Because acceleration actually helps the bar go higher than it would if you just went at a constant, really fast pace. That is just physics I don't have time to get into right now. So because of these common errors, variations can help ingrain the proper movement patterns. Because some variations force you to move correctly if you actually want to be able to make the lifts. One of my go-tos for proving this point is a no-foot snatch. If you're leaving the bar out in front of you on a no-foot snatch, and you try and do that same way, with an average weight on no foot snatch for the first time, you will miss. Like it is a guaranteed you will miss if you are not moving correctly at like your 70%. And that is why I think it's a really good way to help show some errors you're having in the lifts, whether it's you're banging your hip, you're leaving the bar in front, you're rounding the knee, etc. And then also, this is one a little more that complex to help you with as we move a little forward, is including variations plus full movements and complexes can help increase your reps in the session or weekly. Because a complex like a snatch a thigh snatch, say you're 8 singles. So you could have just done snatch 8 singles, but by including that a variation initially, you're actually getting yourself 16 snatch recoveries, or 16 snatches if you just want to call it that, instead of 8. So by little moves like that, you are increasing the volume you do on the athlete. The more work they do, the more they're going to be able to grow and quicker properly. So that's the general basis of how it can help with techniques and by using techniques and complexes. Next major section is it's for fun, like I said at the very beginning. Um, I don't know if any of you are in the sport, but sometimes doing a bunch of snatches and clean and jerks over and over again gets really stale and boring. And you just need to spice something up. That's where so your athlete's starting to get bored. That's when you should be like, all right, what's like the tiny little thing they need to work on or major thing they need to work on? And let's get the variation for that towards the end of this cycle, going to the next cycle, to help get them a little more excited for training. You know, get them a little more excited because if they're excited and always happy to go for the session, they're gonna work harder, they're gonna gain harder, they're gonna build harder. Next, it develops different stimuli as far as like different kind of muscles are gonna be worked more or less depending on the variations you do. So like hang positions are gonna be better for keeping tension and muscle activation in your posterior chain, so your hamstrings, your glutes. They're gonna get the work harder in hang positions where they are off the floor or from blocks. All right. So different stimuli or muscle growth potential here. Next, it can also help them to develop their favorite movement. So when they see it in training, they're like, "Oh heck yes, I love that movement. I can't wait to go training today." So it's once again, it's not a little mentally to help them get going. And it also, yes, like I said, spice training up is like basically correlates with athletes get bored. That's how that helps. So motor patterns is our next one, or it's basically how you know how to move. That's basically what this is gonna be. So motor patterns is gonna be build your proper movement patterns or mind muscle connection between your muscles on how to move the bar in a snatch or a clean. All right. So by doing variations, it's gonna help improve that motor pattern, which is gonna directly lead into better technique, which is why the arrow is drawn connecting the two. All right. So next thing I should probably touch up upon is that why do we want to move better? I mean, other than just it looking nice, feeling nice. Well, it's because if we're moving proper more often and we're more accustomed to it, we have to think about it less when we're actually lifting. Okay? We have to think less about, okay, I have to bring my knees through, I have to bring the bar back, I have to jump. Less of that's going on in our brain. And so less thought about how to move is going to lead to more power because you're going to focus more on driving all the way through the lift. Like the nice smooth first pull and then to the massive acceleration of the second pull. That is what is gonna get focused on now if our movement pattern is completely in check. All right, and this concept can basically just be summarized by a neuromuscular connection between the body and the bar and the movement. Is what we're trying to build here by using variations on as well. All right, and then lastly, the last thing on the board is positional strength. All right. Positional strength is a little more thing that will happen no matter what variation you use, but it's still great to point out that it will happen because it's a benefit. And we all love benefits. The more benefits, the better. That's why you want to do something. So, positional strength, it's basically can help you distribute your muscular load on your body. And what I mean by that is sometimes you do lots of reps, your low back might start to get really sore unnaturally and might impede your training. So by utilizing variations like blocks and all that, we can take stress off of like the lower back. So say you Lower back's a great one, for instance, like I've been using. Say it's getting really sore doing regular snatches, and so you program in block snatches at thigh. It takes that load off the low back in the first pull, and still allows our athlete to drive and work on their snatch technique, their receiving, their catching, their recovery. So you're distributing the muscular load from the back into more of the legs. About that. And because of this, you're targeting more specific muscles, like the quads, like your posterior chain, in like doing a block snatch instead of distributing it evenly over the upper back, which can cause even more growth between those muscles. All right. And then alrighty, this will be our next major topic that we'll be talking about in regards to variation training, and that is programming. So we know what it is, right? Of course we do. There are variations, there are hangs, there are blocks, there are pulls. But actually programming, how do we implement them into our athlete or our own, depending on how we're being coached, training program? And this we get to basically grasp the basics of this, we need to answer three essential questions: when, how, and for how long. All right, these are three essential questions, the bare minimum you should know when you're looking for including variations. So starting with the when, this is essentially when do you know you need a variation? When do you know you need to start hang snatching more or block cleaning more? That's what we're going to cover in this little section right here. So the most obvious or easiest way to spot when you might need to use variations or complexes is when. Is whoops, is technical errors when they are present. All right. So technical errors, or okay, my bad. I had a blank moment. It's when technical errors are either very present or are forming in an athlete. All right. This could be stuff like you're bringing your hips to the bar, you're shifting too hard, you're getting passive, you're bending your arms. All of these types of issues are why we could use programming. So another simple reason you could want to use these is if you want to specify your training or need to strengthen a specific area of your body, such as like say you need a little bit more posterior strength, you would probably want to be doing more hang variations, put more tension in your hamstrings, your glutes, aka your posterior chain. Or finally, to change it up, just the include variation in your program for the sake of having fun or training your athlete, because doing the same clean jerks snatches can get stale really quickly. So shifting a little quickly back on the how or the volume aspect of programming these in. One thing I do want to get very clear is you do not, I will repeat, need to max out every variation you put into your programming. Because these are not, you're not competing in these. You're not competing in a snatch from thigh. You're not competing in a power snatch. You're competing in the snatch and clean jerk. So, because of that, we want to use these variations just to mainly fix the technical issue or whatever issue we have present. They are a tool. They are a tool, not the king, not the end all be all of movements you should do. You just need to think of them as like, hey, an extra wrench to help tighten up this screw. That's what these are. They're a means to an end at the end of the day. So I guess the shift back to I know that's how you should use them, but now just get a little more specific as far as reps and numbers. When you're starting a cycle that's going to utilize variations like snatches and cleans, you generally want to start with your lower intensity or lower weights and higher reps. Because right now we're just trying to build that correct movement pattern that, or whatever we're trying to fix or strengthen. So we just need to get reps in, and you can't do lots of reps with your very high weights effectively, or your techniques will start breaking down. So lower weights, higher reps is how we're going to start building those good patterns, and once those patterns start to form, we slightly begin to reduce the volume week over week and increase the weights till we get to our point where we want to be. So say we start with like 5 triples of a snatch at thigh, all right, because we're trying to really fix our hips coming to the bar. Let's say after the first 2 weeks of 5 triples, we're getting better at it. We're getting better at it. So we're gonna drop it to like 4 triples next week. Get better than that. We're gonna drop the 4 doubles. But then by then we're already looking really good on our snatches. All right. So then we're gonna say, hey, it's fixed the issue. We don't really need it more. We probably do 1 or 2 more weeks of some maybe a little heavier work if we want to, then we kind of discard it and keep going on to a better training to the rest of our training, for our main lifts, the snatch, clean, jerk once again. So, and I guess that kind of falls into the category of how long to do them for. Like I've discussed over our when and how sections of programming. Like you basically want to do them until our issue is fixed. So once again, if that's a technical issue, say we're hip bumping the bar away from us and it's calling us an miss out front, and we give our athletes stuff like snatch at thighs, snatch at knees, or no foot snatches. Maybe if we want to get a little even more creative and do some variations. So as soon as you see the issue getting fixed, is when we can start to taper it off and just be like, hey, it did its job. It did its job. That's what we wanted it to do. So now we don't need it anymore. So we can just move on back to regular training. Or in some cases, straightforward, you might want to do the duration of a training cycle. All right, and now after discussing all of that information, it is time I bring this video to a close. So I did know a lot about this sport, about this topic, or else I never create a video, but I did get some of my information from these sources listed on the slideshow right in front of you. The first, namely, person I talked to was Greg Everett from Catalyst Athletics, which is an amazing source, amazing dude. Puts out lots of cool information. I would highly recommend you check out a lot of his content. It's really good. I found myself referencing it from time to time. Second source was from a little bit of a little bit of a research paper, I guess you could call it, talking about Olympic weightlifting derivatives and a word for variation in this instance for sports performance. That highlights some benefits of using variations that I have found. It's generally very good information. I learned a lot, good stuff from it. Finally, my source was a video from Sika Strength, which is a great source of not just everything weightlifting, but lots of sports training in general, but they do love the Olympic lifts, and they produce lots of quality content of it. I would highly recommend you checking them out, specifically this video, because it elaborates most of what I said in my video, but they're only plus a little bit more niche information, I would say, that you guys could use. And with all that, thanks for tuning into my video.